Hi, everybody. My name is Nik Cherwink, and I currently live in San Diego. I lived in LA for over 12 years. I basically moved to LA right after college. I went to UC San Diego, and then moved to LA to work in the music industry and spent over a decade doing all sorts of fun, awesome things, running around Hollywood, working with artists. Really started my career at Capitol Records, worked there for 3 years. And that was a huge way to just kind of get my foot in the door and met so many great people and artists and just learned so much about the business. And I was originally really just like a metalhead and a rock guy, but
Yeah.
that was like 2008 to 2011. So that was really right when dance music really started blowing up in the United States. Like we signed David Guetta, and man, people can talk as much shit as they want, but like David Guetta brought, electronic music, house music to the mainstream. Like a lot of people wouldn't, I think he played a pretty big role in like bringing that sound into like top 40 radio. And now it's like, EDM is like fully saturated into like every other style and genre of music. Pop music is
pop,
dance
yeah,
music
pop music,
now.
pretty much dance music now. It's wild.
Yeah.
I remember hearing back, and then Martin Garrix came along and guys like that, and it's just like listening back to pop, like say like high school. I'd say for me, which is I don't know 6-7 years ago. There was a lot more like electronic, like synths and stuff involved in the pop music, and I was like, "Wow, this is wild!" Like, so that was right when I was starting to get into the industry and stuff. So,
Yeah. So
yeah,
that was a really fun. And to be honest, I got to work pretty closely with like his manager and his project. And they're the ones that introduced me to a lot of the, cause honestly, like when I first started, like I didn't even like house music. I didn't like electronic music. And so but I started working with David Guetta, and he was just hella cool. He was just this
yeah,
weird 40-something-year-old French guy with long hair. It was like, who the hell is this guy? And like nobody knew, it's like he wasn't popular yet out
yeah.
here. And so I kind of just developed a relationship with him, but then I started going to raves and started partying, and like then I started listening to trance music. Actually, it was really what got me into it.
Which is crazy because
So
I've actually been listening. I'm a huge dubstep fan, obviously, in
uh
California. But recently, trance has been like I listen to trance every day right now. For the last 2 weeks,
oh
I've been
dude,
super into it.
trance is the best, man.
Yeah,
Trance is the best. And it was funny, back then that was like, it was so much bigger, because trance was just, I mean, maybe not bigger, but it was just like dubstep wasn't invented yet.
yeah,
Bass music wasn't a thing
yeah.
yet. So it was like trance music or house music.
House,
Like
yeah,
that was all we had,
yeah,
or drum and bass. Like that was
yeah,
it. So I was like, super trance head into, Armin van Buuren and
yeah.
Tiesto. And but it was such a fun time, man, because it was like still underground and it was just starting to bubble up. But I got consumed. Yeah, I was a raver. I was a total candy kid. Like I was working at Capitol Records, and my nickname was Fist Pump in
Yes.
the office. Everyone called me Fist Pump because I was bumped. I was like really getting into listening to this dance music stuff, and nobody got it. Nobody
Yeah.
understood it. They were like, "Nick, you're weird, dude. You're listening to like techno music, And I was going out every weekend, just like getting fucked up with my friends, having these
Yeah.
super fun experiences, going to raves and from underground raves to like the big Insomniac ones. And then it just hit, then it clicked, then it
Yeah.
was like all of a sudden America like caught on, and it
Yep.
started getting big, and it just blew up. And I left Capitol, and I worked for a couple different managers and got into management, was managing a few artists of my own. But then I found Icon Collective, or Icon Collective found me. I don't really remember how it happened, but basically met the owners, met one of the owners, and each of them at different times, and just totally hit it off
Did you just
with
meet him
just
like
their
at a show
vibe.
or something, or?
You know, how did it happen? My friend was signed up to go to a different school, and one of my artists that I was a manager for, he was friends with one of the owners. So he had been telling me, he's like,
Okay.
yeah, there's this place like Icon Collective. I'm going over there to collab with the owner and work
Yeah.
with him. So I knew the name, and he was always saying like how cool they were. And so when my friend was signed up for this other school, I was like, hey, dude, I was like, before you really commit to this other school, I keep hearing about this place called Icon that's supposed to be really dope. Like, you should go check them out before you spend all this money, you know?
Right.
So I ended up going with him to for his tour
Okay.
and did the little tour with him. And then at the end of it, they let us sit in on this class called The Art of Flow, which the other owner was teaching. And it's like, I think in that class they were like meditating. It was like they had just done like a meditation. And so I was like, whoa, like what the hell? Like they're meditating in here. And I was really getting into my spiritual path and learning all this cool stuff.
Which is a huge part of your life now.
Yeah, certainly. And so then I think I hit up the owner. I met the owner that was teaching that class, Christopher, and I was just like, hey man, like we need to get lunch, because that was super cool. Like I've never at that time I was just around DJs that were like all about partying and the nightclub scene and shit. And I was on my own. I was starting to get into spirituality and some of these other things. And so I was like, hey man, I was like, I just love what you're doing. Like, I'd love to connect with you, because I don't know that many people that are into this kind of stuff.
Right.
So me and him had lunch together. And then shortly after, he was like, hey, he's like, why don't you come teach the music business class here? Because you're a manager and you probably know this shit better than I do. Like, you're actually on the ground, on the front lines, like doing stuff every day, and really had my finger to the pulse. And so they brought me in. I basically took over the music business program, and then just started. I was there for a while, just kind of like coming in part-time just to teach music business classes. But then they offered me, they're like, hey, like if you want to come here full-time, like you can. We could really use you. And I didn't say yes right away, because I was still managing. And I was like with this other kind of management company. And then I just kind of, things weren't really taking off with this other management company. And I was just falling more in love with what they were doing at Icon. So I was like, I accepted that opportunity to just go with them. And I kept managing a few DJs on my own, and it just really organically grew. I was with Icon for like 7 years.
Yeah, you were there a while.
Kind of part-time teaching, and grew to become a really big part of that. I mean, that was like early on. This was like 2011, 2012. That I started teaching. So damn, that was almost 10 years ago now that I say that out loud. So this was back when it was like a little tiny building. We would stay open all night long. It was so funny. You'd see like Sullivan King when Keaton was going there, he would just be like playing with his shirt off, and like we would stay open all night, and it would just become this like wild, almost like party at night. He would have his shirt off. People would just be fucking bumping music, and it was just like the Wild West of Icon, where it was just like an artist school run by artists. And now it's legit. Now it's accredited and it's like a proper college. But back then it was just so like a bunch of fucking dudes that loved making music that would just like threw each other in a room and were teaching each other how to make music. It was so cool. And it's so cool to see what they've become now.
Brand new building.
The music business program, the vocal program. They have 3 programs, huge building. I can't wait to go up and visit them. And you'll be there at some point, which is really exciting.
Looking at January right now. So less than a year.
So cool, man. I can't wait for you.
So out of everything you just said, I do have a couple of questions. One is, if you can give away, I don't know, confidentiality reasons or not, just say no if you can't answer this question. Can you give away any like artists that you used to be a part of and manage, or is that kind of confidential?
Oh yeah, no, I mean, everybody that I managed and was a part of, let's see. Yeah, well, Sullivan King was the last artist that I was a part of. And this is like before, like very, very early on. Helped him, just kind of in the beginning stages. But who else did I manage? There was this group. Let's see. Well, when I started, it was like Peace Treaty was one of the groups that I worked with, which were really awesome. Peace Treaty, Cold Blank, Laser Tag. I helped. So I was with this first management company. I helped. They signed Mac J right as I was leaving, but I kind of like helped them. Like, I remember talking to McKenzie saying like, because Mackenzie was an Icon student, and I
Yeah,
had been
yeah.
working for the company. So I was like, yeah, you really got to sign with these
Yeah.
guys. And they did great with him. He fucking blew up.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
yeah, I was like, damn, I quit too soon.
Right.
um, no, but yeah, that was cool. Who else? Well, really, when I left them, I went and worked with the manager of the Black Eyed Peas. So
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
work with the Peas,
Yeah.
but I was working with two of the DJs that were like the producers. Like they produced
Right.
some of the big like Black Eyed Peas hits. Richard Vision I was helping out with, who was part
Okay.
of that camp. He's like
Yeah.
OG house music guy. And then let's see, yeah, James Egbert. James Egbert was like my dude. He was the one that I don't want to say discovered, but like was, kind of found him on SoundCloud
Yeah.
one day. And yeah, we worked together for 3 years, and he's one of the coolest guys, man. He's like a brother to me, and he has another project now that is really dope also that I
Sweet.
can't talk about.
Yeah,
But yeah, he's
don't
got
talk about anything you can't. I always tell everyone
yeah,
that. If you
yeah.
can't say it, don't
So
do it.
yeah, never managed anyone that was like massive,
Yeah.
but it was like, I got to be around like, the Getta and the
Yeah. Yeah.
Peas,
Yeah.
and like, we were working really closely with like Insomniac from Pasquale. So I was like,
Right. That was my
I
next
helped start.
question.
I helped start the Discovery Project. That
Yeah,
was really cool.
which
I
is
got to be really involved in that, and that was
a
awesome.
really cool project now. I'm a big fan of the Discovery Project, so that's cool.
I don't even know what they're doing these days, but if they're still doing it, I'm happy to hear that they are, because that was literally almost. I think that was probably 2012 that we started that,
they have
or 2013.
They have a whole stage at EDC now that's all Discovery Project artists. And then they're also doing, like, for their live streams and stuff during COVID. They did, I think it was the EDC Virtual Raveathon. They did like the main stage, and then they had a separate channel for the Discovery Project. So they're still doing stuff with it. Yeah.
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 Um,
Yeah. They're sick. That was really cool, man. I had some very fun, like this is where I love getting into the spirituality stuff.
Go for it. This is what I want to dive into.
like you guys have probably hopefully heard of this idea called like the law of attraction. It's
Yeah.
basically like what you focus your mental thoughts on is what you attract into your life. So if you focus on drama and you focus on how things suck, then
Your life's gonna
you
suck.
continue to have drama, and you continue to have things that suck in your life. But if you really focus on like your dreams and your goals and what you want to create, then you can do that as well. And so, I mean, I remember being at Capitol Records and looking across the street at Avalon. It was a nightclub right across the street. It was like the popular nightclub in LA, and
still is one of the bigger ones.
Seeing the long lines of everybody getting in line, and I was like, someday, like I'll be able to just be able to walk in there, and sure enough, like less than a month later, I was working for the guys that threw the party. Like they hired me to like work with them. And even just before that, I was like, man, I really want to get out of like the major label. Like working for Capitol Records was cool, but I also had to work with a lot of artists that I didn't like. I was working with these kind of random projects and stuff. We worked with everybody, but I was like, I really specifically, I love electronic music and I want to work with DJs. And so I was like putting that thought of like, this is the vision that I want. And it was like it must have been like 6 months from like making that decision of wanting to do that. I was like literally like in a taxi with Pasquale in Amsterdam, like going to fucking like techno shows at like 4 a.m. And it's like I went from like 0 to 100. I went from like
sick.
I went from like I know like one person in the electronic scene. I think I knew like maybe 3 managers in the scene. And 6 months later, I was like, oh, I'm literally like as in it as you can fucking be.
Yeah.
And it was really cool. It was like this very quick kind of just like skyrocket, to jump into that world. And it was fun, but to be honest, it was really like getting into Icon was what then, I loved the scene, but when it's just about the shows and the partying and the lifestyle, it was missing something.
Yeah.
And for me, I grew up as an artist. So I was really more into like what's happening in the studio and what's happening in the creative process. And I've always had this sort of passion for like personal development and also like spirituality. And so when I found Icon, they were the ones that were really, they were bringing all of that together, where
Yeah.
it's like, okay, we're really teaching people how to be creative. We're, you know, helping them learn the artistic side of making music, and we're really helping people expand their minds and become better people. So that's why I was like, okay, this like whole world of like shows and nightlife stuff is cool, but like I felt like this is really where I belong, is
Yeah.
more
I
on
feel
that level.
I feel very much the same way. I think we all get into it because of the party scene of it. That's what initially attracts us, and then it's like the longevity of everything is like working with you and working with, you know, the All In Artist program and all those guys. And like I'm like I said on our last call, I think with those guys, I was like, man, like it's really like the more I get into it, and the more I'm around people like that or you, and you know, the spirituality side, and like just because you know, I come from a Christian background, so having that like two worlds kind of come together in a weird kind of odd way is what
Mm,
makes me know in my heart and my soul that like this is what I meant to do, you know, because I
yeah.
want to continue on bringing that light to the industry of a lot of party and drug use and all that kind of stuff. So
It's funny, man. Like I'm not religious.
yeah,
I just consider myself like spiritual.
yeah,
I believe in, I don't have a problem using the word God, but I'll
yeah,
also use the word the universe,
universe, yeah,
or, you know, fill in the blank. Every language kind of has its own word for that. But whatever
yeah,
that is, I believe in it because I tap into it and I have a
right,
connection with it, and I use it and it
yep,
uses me.
yep,
But I can't tell you how many artists I've talked to, artists or just like even industry people, that it's like they're scared to talk, especially like religiously, like people
right,
that are Christian
yeah,
are like scared oftentimes to admit that they're a part of the scene, or they like they feel almost I don't want to say shameful, but it's like these two worlds can't exist. It's like,
right,
okay, if you're in the scene, then that means like you just got to be fucking cool and wear all black and
yeah,
be all about the music and be all about the partying and like,
yeah,
but like don't tell anybody you go to church on Sunday, or
yeah,
don't tell
yeah,
anybody you have like spiritual beliefs,
right,
or have this like, you know, religious background. I've had almost these like coming out conversations with people where they're like, hey, like I got to come out to you, like I'm actually Christian. It's like, cool.
cool,
But it's so
yeah,
funny though too. Like I feel like people are like hiding their truth with
yeah,
this sort of wearing this mask of being this like this cool fucking industry person, and then hiding the truth of who they are, which I think is like totally bullshit. And
yeah,
I mean, our scene, right? The scene is
yeah,
supposed to be, at least when I'm old, so I come from back when we actually were like candy kids, and it was about plur, and
yeah,
it was real. It was a
yeah.
real ethos and a real lifestyle. It's about accepting everybody for who they
And
are,
I
no matter
think
what. And it's
that's
like,
specifically where that link is for me.
mm,
Understanding the plural, like peace, love, unity, respect, and also like understanding like just treat people as people, be a good person. Like I feel like
yeah,
that's, you know, those two.
yeah,
I think that's the direct connecting link for me,
yeah,
is
man.
between the two.
I mean, that's like
And
that's,
working with you too. I mean, that you've really pushed me into like speak your truth, you know.
mm,
So
yeah.
knowing that that is my truth, how can I bring that into the world that I love and I'm existing in already, you know?
I don't think people, we haven't yet talked about how we know each other.
No. Okay. So, yeah, we kind of just got off on a roll here. So,
Well, you meant
um,
because you mentioned the all in artist. You mentioned
yes,
the group, and so people are kind
yes.
of like, what the hell is he
Well, I
talking about?
did. The people who have been keeping up on my Instagram do know how, but yeah. So for those of you who don't know, I saw an interview that Cymatics did with you, Nick. That was in 2019, I think.
A
And
couple years ago.
then I reached out to you, and I was like, man, like this really resonated with me, like just everything you were saying. And that's how I found out that, you know, Icon was opening a music business program, and that's kind of where my head was going anyways. And I was like, man, this is perfect. And I just took a chance and reached out to you. And it's kind of funny. I don't think I've ever told you this, but I was like, all right, cool. He doesn't have like 50,000 followers. Like, he might message me back. And So yeah, so then I reached out to you, and then we got talking, and we were kind of just like we just kept in touch for like a year or so, and then I got to the point where I could actually we talked about Icon, and you're like, actually, I'm doing life coaching now. This is I've kind of ventured off, and I'm doing this now, and I was like, oh, that's sick. Okay. And I was already passionate about, I was already getting into like my self-development journey and like getting more in touch, back in touch. Cause I went through a period of time where I was like, okay, yeah, I was raised Christian, but do I really believe this? I was kind of doing some soul searching. And, then when I reached out to you, you were like, oh yeah, I'm a life coach. And I was following and I was reading a book, off another life coach. And I was, it's kind of how I got into it. And I was like, oh, that's sick. Like you're a life coach as well. And we have this music thing in common. And I was like, that's like almost like divine intervention kind of for me. And then, yeah. And then after that, we just kept in touch. And then all of a sudden you're like, at some point I'm going to coach you. I'm like, all right, cool. And then I finally like got to a point where like I could afford it and we worked it out. And then we worked together starting what, August, I think, of last year. I
Feels
think it
like
was
years.
August. Yeah.
Only August.
Yeah, I think it was only August. And then, yeah, and then you launched the All In Artist program, we just wrapped up. Why don't you give a little bit of an explanation of what that is?
Oh yeah, I'll say what it was
Was,
because
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I just ran it once, but
Yeah.
yeah, I had I honestly was sitting there one day and I had just this lightning bolt of inspiration hit me that gave me this idea to put together a what became an 8-week program of basically helping artists really go all in on their dream. And it was wild because it just the whole curriculum just kind of hit me like in a flash. And it was just like, oh, like, yeah, this is where we start. These are all the things like we need to cover, that like a lot of mindset stuff, a lot of energy stuff, creativity stuff, really just commitment, drive, like all the things that I think an artist really needs to have in place in order to succeed and really
Yeah.
go all in. Because I think that that is the first step. I mean, the first lesson was just about belief. It's like, hey, if you want to do this, like that's where it begins. Believing in yourself and making the
Yep.
commitment to go all in.
Yep.
Those are like the first 2 weeks. Because a lot of times, yeah. Anyways, I don't know.
Yeah.
I won't go
He
go
had
too loud.
a
So any,
he had a full we had to sign a contract. We had to do all kinds of stuff.
yeah, yeah. Sign your contract. That was fun.
Yeah, it was.
So, but for me, it was really like it was like a creative project for
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
as someone who's taught about creativity for so long. To come full circle, that class that I sat in on at Icon Collective, the Art of Flow, a couple of years later, I ended up teaching, and I took over as the teacher for that class. It was pretty wild, but it was just all about creativity, and I've sort of talked about it and preached about it for so long. But me making the program was me finally actually really putting my money where my mouth is and actually going through those same creative principles to bring that that program to life. So yeah, it was all video based. Like I recorded, it was
Yeah.
like a whole online video, based program, and we met every week. And but halfway through running it, I realized I'm like, hey, you know what? Just I had this sort of shift. I was like, I think I'm kind of done with the artist stuff. Like I think I want to move on and
That's
graduate and start climbing a new mountain.
that's
So
where I was gonna
I
go with our conversation next. So
yeah,
continue.
yeah. So yeah, so we just last week we just wrapped up the last call. Ran my plan originally was like, cool, I'm going to make this program and just like run it for at least like a year.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just ran it once, and I'm like, no, I'm ready for something is calling me
Yeah.
to lean into it next. Yeah.
Now, what is that? What is your next step? Like in the next 5 years, what's your goal with
Mm.
your coaching?
It's funny, man. I won't even look 5 years into the
Okay.
future anymore because I don't know what 5 years is
Right.
going to look like, but it's like, what's happening right now? What's my passion? What's my purpose? What's my mission right now?
Yeah.
I do actually, I take that back. There is this bigger picture sort of thing that's like maybe beyond 5 years, is like, I really want to actually get into like reforming the public education system and start bringing ideas and principles and curriculums to public education that I think are things that we need to be teaching like young people, like
Like
just some
what sorts of things?
basic personal development type of
Right.
stuff. It's like
Right.
we learn so much garbage that
Yeah.
we don't actually use in our life. But how about some basic communication skills?
Yeah. Dude.
How about some
Yeah.
emotional intelligence?
Yeah.
Some of these
Yeah.
things, it's like, yeah, they would really help.
Very much so.
So
People,
yeah, anyways,
especially my age. I mean, luckily I kind of took that journey on my own, but
yeah,
friends of mine and people that I know that are my age, like they're so like emotionally like drained and just like have all kinds of
yeah,
stuff going on in their lives, and they don't know how to step away from and like remove themselves from certain
yeah,
things and really do
because
what's
they're
best for them and follow their own
yeah.
path, like that's so important.
Because we're not taught these things,
Yeah.
like maybe if you had like really awesome parents, like they
Right.
taught you, but for most of
Luckily
us,
for
like,
me, I
no.
did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it would be really cool. Like I'd love to start, even just like starting in college. It's like if
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
freshman year you go to college, it's like, hey, here's some basic life skill shit
Yeah.
for you to learn.
That's pretty
Not just
much
like
when I
balancing
started.
a bank account.
That's pretty much what
Yeah.
when I started was right when I kind of got into college. So,
Yeah,
um,
yeah. So that's the probably, 5 years down the road.
okay.
But
As of right
right
now, what are
now,
you
yeah,
working on?
right now, what I've been really interested and passionate about has been men's work, which
Yes.
I've
Yes.
I've worked mostly with guys. Like I've certainly had female clients, and I love working with women. I grew up with women,
Yeah.
and I think that's maybe what makes me so also interested in this kind of like men's work as well. It's because I've sort of maybe seen it from both sides. But yeah, and that's I'm still figuring out what that really means.
Right.
But getting into working specifically with men, it's obviously like every man is different. Every man is different, but there also are these sort of commonalities, I think,
Yeah.
perhaps, that we
Yeah.
all sort of experience. And just when it comes to relationships, it's like,
Yeah.
to be very like broad and general, it's like, men and women are kind of fundamentally different, and we sort of think differently, we
Yeah.
work differently, we act differently. So I love getting into relationship stuff. I love getting into like that, just the dynamics of partnership and relationship, but also there's, on a more spiritual kind of energetic level, we have these like ideas of masculine and feminine energy, and
Yep.
and those exist within anybody, whether you're male, female, or non-binary, like
Yep.
whatever, wherever you fall,
Yep.
kind of on the spectrum, um, or off of the spectrum, like
Right.
whatever you identify yourself with. Like as a human, we do have these two sort of energetic states. So I really love diving into like this exploration of masculine energy,
Yeah.
and I think it's because I spent so much time in the art of flow. That's all about feminine
Yeah.
energy. It's all about creativity, and creativity is flow. It's like it's about, there's no boundaries. Like you just kind of, you're like water, you're flowing, you're moving, you're grooving, and that's the sort of essence of feminine energy. Whereas
And
masculine energy is like the strong, grounded,
yeah.
direction side, directed side of it. And I
With
think, yeah,
with this project too, I've really learned. I've for a while I have been reading books like No More Mr. Nice Guy that
mm-hmm,
had me read, and some other books that are like more on like the masculine, like learning, all that material. And I think it's been 3 or 4 years now that I've been, absorbing information that is, in that realm. And
mm-hmm,
now that I have this project, there's a lot of like, I never really got into exercising my creativity until
mm,
this project.
yeah,
Um, and, I posted a video this morning of you talking with Steven from Cymatics, and you were saying, there's you have to have the same creativity that you use to produce your music, you have to use to put into your business, your branding, your marketing, all that kind of
yeah,
stuff. And I
yeah,
didn't even before, like, I mean, once I heard that, I was like, okay, cool. Like, but now that I'm actually able to practice it, it's like, okay, now I'm trying to find the balance between the feminine and the masculine, and how
mm-hmm,
how do you balance that as a creative person, as
yeah,
a creative man,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah, for sure.
yeah.
And so much of it is really about following your intuition.
Yeah.
I think that, masculine energy can kind of be connected more to like boundaries and structure. And
Yeah.
it's sort of like, this is the way that you do it. There's a little bit of like of a system, and it's
Hmm.
logical.
Hmm.
It's more in the head. And so that's where it's like, okay, cool. Like, come up with your business plan,
Right.
and come up with like your things to do list, and,
Yeah.
and schedule time,
Yeah.
put
Yeah.
it in your day. You be disciplined about execution,
But within
right?
that
And
time, then you got to
yeah,
use your feminine.
the
Yeah.
the other side of it is more about like your feeling and your
Yeah.
intuition,
Yeah.
and just like having flexibility and
Hmm.
just going wherever the creativity wants you to go. So
And being okay with not always like being like we've talked about in the past, like we got to reschedule, we got to push it back, we got to you got to
yeah.
adjust things. You just allow yourself to kind of flow with it as well. So
Yeah,
yeah,
flexibility for sure. Also just the seed of this was planted, like just the idea of it. It was inspiration.
yeah,
You had this feeling,
yeah,
and you're like,
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
inspired. I just have this creative idea,
yeah,
and it's inspiring. So the seed of it really kind of was like I guess the sort of like feminine energy aspect of
right.
it, but then you had to
Execute.
execute the
Yeah.
vision, right?
Yeah.
That's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, that's where there's that sort of masculine energy of the structure that comes out from it. So
Yeah.
it's definitely both of them working together. So I don't know. To me, it's all just concepts, man. All this shit's just
Right.
made up. None of it's actually real, but
It's all the
it
Matrix anyways, it's
helps.
fine.
It helps to just like, I think, anyway, where we have to come up with like words and systems and processes and archetypes and things like that to make sense of the world.
Yeah.
And so this is just sort of a framework that I find really kind of helps me start to make sense of the world and make sense of myself.
Absolutely.
And it's just, I don't know, it's fun. It's fun to get into. I think like because I've been like, the pendulum for me in my journey has swung far to each
Yeah.
side, where it's like, on the one hand, I have been like, I grew up being an artist. I grew up being like, making music all the time, and was kind of, really in tune with that sort of creative side. And I've also totally been a jock, and I've been
Yeah.
lost in this like toxic masculinity of being in a frat, playing sports, being a rugby player, fucking totally just like being a crazy party animal.
Yeah.
But then I've also really found this feminine connection through music in the rave scene, and the plur life, and just like being in cuddle puddles and hugging people. So it's like, I've played so much on the spectrum of both of those things, that now I find it really, really interesting to be like, hey, where's that balance? And how can I lean into each side of those? Like when I need to, like, when do I need to bring out the badass warrior that needs to chop off some fucking heads and get shit done? And then when do I need to lean into like the lover and the empathetic person, and lean into that? And so I think that what I see is, there's some people that are, kind of stuck on one side or the other. Right. And especially for the guys that haven't really tapped into like their masculine core, their masculine energy, there's, especially in living in a world where we're so addicted to our phones, and we're so unplugged, we're so disconnected from reality, we're disconnected from our power. I think there's a lot of men that are living as very weak versions of themselves, that aren't like stepping into the power that they actually have inside of them, where they can really truly rise and just like kick ass and be leaders and be heroes and just be fucking awesome. We're sitting here like watching the world through Instagram and through Netflix. And so I think of like what's coming up for me now is just like this passion for wanting to like really like help people wake up their masculine core.
Which I don't think I've ever, I attempted, and I started learning principles and stuff, but until I started working with you, and I'm excited for what's to come as you really start to figure out and develop a coaching kind of style too. And me being along that journey, I'm stoked for that. I'm super excited for that to not affect me too, and everyone else that's going to be involved with that. So,
well, I get to thank you, because there was you and probably like a handful of other people, clients that came along, where it was like, the initial conversation maybe was like, hey, I want help with my art, or I want help with my
Yeah.
business, I
Yeah.
want help
Yeah.
with this. But then as we started getting into it, it was like, hey, here's some
Yeah.
other stuff for us to look at that is
Yeah.
actually really, really cool and really inspiring and really transformational.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until I worked with you and worked with like a
Yeah.
couple other clients, I was like, hey, you know what? Like, this is the shit that's really, I feel like, is really exciting and really important.
That's
So
awesome.
thank you for being a big part of my journey.
Yeah, dude. If there is, I'm gonna go, and this is gonna be my last question before I ask you where people can find you at. But if there was one piece of knowledge that you could share with anyone trying to make it in the music industry, what would it be? It could be a couple things, but
I think the biggest piece is trust yourself,
yeah,
listen to yourself. You know, like, everybody else has an opinion, everybody else has a style, everybody else has some sort of template or just idea of what they think things should be and how they should be done. But you are the only you, and you get to bring something completely special and unique to the industry, whether that's on the business side or whether that's on the creative side. So to really trust yourself and not fall into anybody else's formula for what you think like things are supposed to look like, you know, really just to like be an innovator,
yeah,
and trust yourself in that process. I think that's the most important thing.
sweet. Um, that's great advice, man. It's one thing that I've really tried to go for, and I did have an innovative idea, and if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have gotten the nudge to actually dive into this project. So, thank you so
I,
much. Go
I have
ahead.
to say how cool it is to be sitting here talking on your podcast, which was like an idea from a conversation that we had, you know,
Yeah,
months and months ago. But to the way that I mean, I've had plenty of conversations with clients about ideas,
yeah,
and I've had, you know, or just friends or people in
right,
general, like everybody
right.
has a fucking
Yeah,
idea.
yeah,
Cool. They're a dime a dozen. But the
right.
way that you just dove in and you executed and you made it happen, you made it come to life. You've been knocking this thing out of the park, and that's been the coolest thing to see. So it's
Thank
an
you.
honor to be actually sitting here with you today
Yeah,
and be a part of it.
yeah. Thank you so much. I mean, from the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate you not only being on the podcast, but also, giving me the nudge and, being in my corner. I know we've actually never, for everyone who's listening, we've never met in person. So to have this deep of a relationship with someone who we really have only connected on like Zoom and phone calls and text message and Instagram,
Yeah.
I really feel like you're in my top 5 people in my life right now, and I appreciate you so much, dude. I love you.
Yeah. I
Thanks for
love you
being
too,
on.
man.
Thanks,
I can't
thanks
wait to
for being
give you a big ass hug when we
right,
finally meet each other
right,
someday.
dude. It's gonna be so. Just between you and I, and whoever's listening to this podcast, working at Amazon, I actually have an opportunity in July to come down to San Diego. So
Oh
I
shit.
might be coming down there pretty soon. So
Oh
if
wow.
I'll keep in touch with you about that. But
Let me know,
yeah.
man.
Last but certainly not least, how can people get in contact with you and find you and stuff?
Yeah, probably Instagram, I'd say, is the best way these days. So
Yeah.
just hit me up on Instagram, Nik Cherwink, Nikcherwink.
Sweet.
Pretty easy to find.
Awesome. Well, thank you, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, brother.
All right. Bye.